Hi, welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. We are going to continue our flight in learning just a little bit more of this ancient language, my native tongue. And I hope you can see the screen now. Okay. Yesterday, we talked about 雷厉风行, which is describing a human action quality, the movement quality, with accent as sharp as thunder and with the speed as fast as wind. So that's the kind of quality of your movement is expected. 雷厉风行, basically like do things fast with such natural element quality instead of drag it. So today we continue with 风风火火闯九州. This expression, as you can see, is 7 characters. It's not a classical in the sense of we form meanings in 4 characters. When you see 7, a lot of times it came from almost like a tagline from something. So 风风火火闯九州, I guess it was popularized during maybe the 90s. So it didn't happen that ancient. It's a recent expression. I guess it's actually from a song lyrics from one of the movie shows. So I forgot exactly which movie show, but it was a recent expression. 风风火火闯九州. If you use 风风火火, that's enough to describe almost like a 雷厉风行. We're using natural elements to describe human behavior. So over here, we again have the wind, and then we have fire, and we all know when wind and fire, they meet together, what's the effect is that? It's like a wildfire growing wild, is uncontainable. And that's describing a human behavior, almost like that one single person can go around places in this wildfire-like quality or energy. Okay, so again, review of wind. Wind came from this worm, this is soft body worm breaking out of its shell or its cell, I mean, C-E-L-L. Not exactly cell. Well, cell in the sense of it's an enclosed egg thing that I break out from it. So I don't know, this horizontal line may signify some sort of liquid or nutrition, right, to keep it alive. So basically, this is like a self-contained life-sustaining environment. Basically, ICU, right, for the worm that give them a safe environment to grow until they mature to a level to be able to self-sustain, to find their food on their own instead of living in this enclosed, nutrition-rich and a safe environment. So that worm breaking from its not exactly womb like a baby now, right? It's kind of an egg or an incubator for the worm. Compare that to when the wind starts to pick up. It's the season, sometime in spring. We have a 惊蛰actually. Now thinking about it. Chinese calendars mark throughout the year 24 milestones or timelines throughout the year. So we have, in the Western, we have 12 months, right? And in Chinese lunar calendar, which is built to suit the agriculture activities, to mark the major temperature or creature movement. So 惊蛰 is one of them. It's early on in the springtime. That's when the wind starts to pick up and also the worms start to move. So this describes that timing. So wind is using this symbol of something concurring event, not about the wind picking up on its own. Because, hey, wind is abstract. You can only feel it. You cannot see it even, and it's only a horizontal spatial movement, right? It's hard to describe by language. So the language creator, therefore, choose a concurring event about this worm thing. I guess it was a well-known fact back then, because I mean, in contemporary lives, like we hardly notice anything happening out there in nature. But for a farming society, when the worms start to move, and the worm moving probably is associated with farming. When the soils start to loosen, there are still creatures that start to move around in the soil, right? So that's when everybody noticed that when the worms start to move, the winds start to move too. So this is the wind concept that's indirectly using another concurring event to symbolize that. Okay, fire is simply a visual representation of fire, and it's almost like a cone shape, except it's a 2D space. You cannot really express as a cone, but the fire's main body is this shape, and then fire has sparkles that can escape from the main body of the fire. So that's a visual representation of the fire. And 风风火火, again, Chinese have this special phenomenon of pairing exact the same character, repeating it twice. 风风, and now we have another element, 火火. I find this is quite a unique Chinese way to express, because you have 风, you have 火. That's enough information for us, right? But intentionally duplicate it, double-size everything, and like sound effects. When we hear it, 风风火火, it gives us a sense of rhythm and the volume as well, right? So almost by repeating itself right next to each other, it creates a space, a richer space in our mind. When we hear 风风火火, that means a lot of wind is going on and associated with a lot of fire going on. So that's the effect of language. It's just simply repeated, and then it creates a volume to it, a body, a sense of almost 3D dimensional to it. Okay, 闯九州, 闯, I translate it as venture, but visually it's represented by a horse and a door or a gate. So there are two ways to view this. A horse paired with a gate. You can view it from inside the gate. So someone who is on a horse is standing in front of the gate that's ready to go out from this domestic space, from out to the world. So that's venture out from your familiar environment or your home, going out of the gate. That's one way. The other one is viewing from outside the gate. So I eventually, as I do more language preparation, I read a little bit more about the language origins of the context and stories behind. And then at some point, I realized ancient societies, because it's agricultural society, most of people live by the land, right? So it's small villages. But when people, higher population gather, who are non-farmers, who are kinds of like craftsmen or other kind of specialty skill, the people that they can provide to society something that's not depend on the farm. They gather, becomes a little town thing, right? In the West, it's castle. So a group of people living together within that castle. And the castle normally have this stone walls, and so self-defend, self-sustained system, right? So this gate, closing the gate at night, was a common practice back then in China as well. So I imagine Europe, this is a practice too, right? So in ancient China, when such town forms, that non-farming population gather, and I guess some government agencies in there as well, however level that's in the hierarchy of the importance of that local town, right? So now we have, from country, we have the capital of the country, and then there are different regions, right? Or different states or provinces. However, you cut down the area, and then there is also a capital of local, and then a capital of further cutting down smaller region, right? So ancient times when such gated community, which is kind of a town. It's not exactly a city like in our imagination now, but it's more like a castle. It's an enclosed area that when the gate have to be there to defend themselves from outsiders, this horse standing in front of the gate means standing outside of the gate. Well, first off, the gates will be closed at night, so no traffic after a certain time of the day. That's one thing. So that means this horse have to arrive during the open traffic time. So when the horse arrive at the open gate, actually, it has to be open, right? When it's in with the traffic flow. So that means somebody is riding on a horse without stopping, just running through the gate without, waiting for the checkpoint to show your like intention or however get yourself checked. So this breaking through the security checkpoint at a gate is the second reading of how this word came into being. And that probably when contemporary Chinese users use 闯, do have the sense of this momentum, like comes in with a force, with momentum, with a strong intention, you want to do something. And when there are barriers, kind of like the checkpoint place, that you're going to break through it and keep moving. So there is such a sense of you're breaking through the barrier. So that's 闯. Okay, 九州 connected together means the vast land or the whole China. So there are several ways that China collectively refer themselves as China. So this 九州, I guess, is geographically describing China as composed of 9 different states. But again, Chinese use numbers, not in the exact sense. When we say 9, it means a lot of. It doesn't necessarily mean exact 9. So 9 simply because it's almost the biggest number in a 10-digit system, right? It's not 10. 10 is like a fully everything, but 9 is 9 of them. So one of them is not us, but I guess that shows the Chinese sense of how big they are in the world. So if the whole world is 10, they govern 9 pieces of it, and only the 10 is somewhere out there that's not under their direct government. Probably that's what that is as well. So 9 came from this number 8, which is kind of looking like this. 8 means a separation. And then there's one horizontal line. So 8 plus a horizontal line simply means 8 plus 1, that's 9. And eventually this horizontal line got connected to this one of the strokes of the 8. So that becomes like one stroke, and then you have this stroke coming down. So that's our number 9. And then 州, I translate here as states because simply to give the contemporary English users a sense of how it's comparable. It's probably a piece of land that's governed as a unit somehow, and under like now it's 9 units of this, and then that composed of kind of like a United States, right? They're united as one country or one nation, right? But under it there are different states. So 9 states, this sense of states came from, you see this? When I first see this, it's like, wow, I'm blown away, because contemporarily we see this is a simplified Chinese, right? It looks like, okay, this, I know as a contemporary Chinese user, this means streams, because it does give you this visually, things are going from one direction to another, and there are 3 of them. So it gives you a volume or a spatial sense of how wide that stream is. It's not definitely a creek or brook, it's wider streams, almost like a river, right? It's flowing with a certain speed because they're not blocks, there's no blocker, things are going smoothly. Now, contemporary Chinese, we only see 3 dots over there. It doesn't really give me a visual sense of how the dots and the strings are connected. Here is how they're connected. See that? It's almost like, okay, curve and curve. It has a beauty to it. And it's not a streamline either. There's a curve to it. And then it's repeated 3 times, like exact 3 times copy of the same thing. And it gives you a sense of, okay, the water flow going across this supposedly island in the stream and then continues its journey. So that's how streams and water body wrapping around or circling around a major big block on their path, how that water go around it and continue the journey. And I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful. So that island inside the stream of water, that is how Chinese express 州. It basically means islands. And I guess ancient Chinese have an understanding of themselves, like they are on a big piece of island, indeed, like Eurasia continent is the biggest continent. And on one side of it is a huge, like a desert and high-rise mountain range. It's kind of a contain their region or activity toward more the coastal side, where the temperature, the humidity is right to do farming. So that's where the major settlement of society and civilization and this language user came like a cluster around. But somehow probably in the back of their mind, like we are living on a big piece of island in the middle of ocean, water wrapped body. So we existing on top of this big island thing. So, I mean, I can understand if Indonesians, they describe themselves as zhou, like 1,000 islands composed of this nation, that kind of place. It's more making sense, right? But China as a biggest landmass on Earth, they are still having the sense of they are made up from multiple islands. That's an interesting thing. So I guess somewhere along the history that this island, this sense of island, then used as, okay, sense, I mean, this island is a separate region from other islands. It's separated. So this separation of land by water then came transferred to the separation of the land by regime, like whoever choose to govern and cut piece of land from each other, ruled by different subunits of that hierarchy. And then that separation, that land was the meaning of here. So it doesn't really mean island, but it means a separation of unit of land. Okay. 风风火火闯九州, I translate it as fugitive. It's probably not true, but paired with this drawing, this one is an ancient way of Chinese painting, rendered, of course, by contemporary artists. So it's an inked. It's with brush on paper. So it's inked in. So it's mostly black and white with a tiny little bit of accent of red color on it. And so you can kind of see the flow of the strokes kind of has its character, its life to it. And it shows the image diagonally. So to give you a sense of unstable, right? Things are moving. And also, okay, I'm not sure if Western users realize what that is. So this gourd thing was an ancient container of wine bottle. or drinks bottle. So Chinese men back then, drinkers, they would use this gourd to hold their drinks. And that implies this person most likely was drunk. And from the outfit it's wearing, you can see it's kind of wintertime. They got like furry hat wear and cover, kind of like a cloak. So it's winter coat time, and the drinking probably keeps him warm as well. And then he has a weapon. So this is a big shelved, seized knife. So he's a fighter, he's a warrior, he has a weapon. At that time, there was no guns, right? So this is that era's gun. Well, this came from a popular classical Chinese literature called 水浒传. Actually, it's one of the 4 classical literature. That's a very thick novel describing 108 individual characters, 108. And each one, well, there are main characters and sub-characters. I guess he is one of the main characters because he came from a high position in the military, actually. His profession was the coach of the rookies to train them from civilians into military. So that means he knows how to fight individually or in an army form. And basically, he's the alpha of that whole ancient governing system's military arm. And then something happened, a tragedy of somebody, a high-ranking official who is not a fighter, but who's not in the military, but who is in a higher rank to him, saw his wife and basically raped his wife. I guess his wife then killed herself as a response to that shame. And then he, as part of the governing what's the word? Governing body, right? Okay, so he's one of the top military guy, at least training the military for the government. He was like a comfortable living as the governing, as the one of the government guys, right? To rebel against the government because of this tragedy. So this frame was describing his sense of like internal turmoil, the anger and the injustice he experienced. And I forgot the detail if he killed whoever raped his wife, but he at this moment was like enraged and added, that's why he drinks. Not only keep warm, but he was like enraged. And so for somebody who has to be shut out of their sphere of a comfortable living, part of the government, to anti-government, to be a rebel. I mean, rebel in ancient times is a killing, is a death. So it's like he would rather go against the government and train a bunch of rebels, I guess, instead of trying to protect the government. He is going on the other side. That's a huge risk to take, but he'd rather do that. So that's how this incident is life-changing event to him. And he became one of the main characters of this 108 guys. And actually there are a few female characters in it as well. So they are kind of a gangster to fight against the government. So this, I paired this kind of angered man seeking revenge, seeking to rebel, with 风风火火闯九州 to give you the sense of 风风火火. It's high energy, even if it's a negative, intrigued energy. Still, it's full of anger. It's like a fire, and they group together almost like a wildfire, going to, to do something to the government, right? Anti-government movement. So this paired with that's a sense of high energy. And the 闯九州also, there's a breaking through the barrier or the governing or the constraint you feel, society or the government put on individuals back then. So this sense of breaks through it. Lawbreakers basically, and 九州 because they have to leave their hometown to escape. Eventually, this 108 anti-government rebels, they group together in a island, so they're kind of separated from the mainland, and that's how fugitive. I use this word to mean they are really rebels, and they cannot live in a regular society anymore. They have to band together to rebel with, I guess, significant enough damage to the main governing body back then. So that's the background. 风风火火闯九州. Cashing into the currency of thinking by one word a day. See you another day.